Hey everybody, how's it going? Hello, welcome to another Vegan Primary Care live session. This is Dr. Scott Harrington coming to you live from my doctor's office at veganprimarycare.com, where you can see a vegan doctor as your primary care doctor from the comfort of your own home from most U.S. states. If you happen to live in Florida, I'm also open for in-person visits Fridays in Pinellas Park, north of St. Petersburg. Come see me not just as a one-time consultation, but as your primary care doctor. Someone who gets to know you and someone who can be your health advocate. Because I'm licensed in most US states, even if you move, you don't have to change doctors. If you are vegan, then get a doctor who gets you. If you haven't adopted a plant-based diet yet, you're still welcome to be my patient. But beware, a healthy vegan diet, exercise, and lifestyle changes will always be my first recommendation. My goal is to help you take control of your health. And through the power of a healthy lifestyle, we will work to heal your chronic conditions with the ultimate goal of helping you come off your chronic medications. For my patients who cut out animal products, you will not only be helping yourself feel better, but you will also do your part to stop animal suffering and decrease your impact on the environment. All right. As you know, we offer vegan primary care patients free weekly weight loss check-ins with a weight accountability visit on a private group Zoom meeting, Tuesday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern. There we share our weight loss tips and tricks among the vegan primary care community members. Remember that this content is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This video is not intended to take place of your own doctor's advice. Okay, we are live streaming on multiple platforms and ready to take your questions. All right, I see we got several folks going already. Hello, if you are in the chat, go ahead and say hi. Hold on one second. My nose was itching, honestly. Okay, Roman Lufa, hello. I probably hope I'm getting that pronounced right. I saw you on Instagram. How's it going? And Ann Grimmer, hello. And Tamara Sergi, nice to see you guys. Hello. Well, as you know, you can just simply put in a question in the comments section and you can get it answered by a vegan doctor. I was on Instagram just a second ago going over some stuff, some tips and tricks for a holiday diet. What do you do? You're gonna have to interface with other family members that may or may not be vegan. It can be kind of frustrating. We've got Karen Hodgen. How's it going? Yeah, it can be very frustrating. So one of the things that I do is a lot of times I'll bring our own dishes to, if we're going to an extended family holiday dinner, or you may have some super nice family members who also separate your food from theirs, and so you don't get butter and stuff mixed into mashed potatoes and that kind of thing. All right. So Roman asks, can you repeat the relationship between vitamin D and higher blood pressure? Okay, one of the things that vitamin D does is regulate your calcium, and it works together with your parathyroid hormone. And so if you think about a lot of times we can get kind of complacent about things. We can get kind of complacent about, our B12 and our vitamin D because we can't really tell what's going on inside our body. And so, there's not good feedback mechanism to tell you that you're low in vitamin D or you're low in B12. And so these are the two things that you can't get from your diet with a routine vegan diet. So you have to supplement. So one of the things that the vitamin D deals with is calcium and calcium absorption, and parathyroid works in tandem with your vitamin D. If the vitamin D is low and the body needs more calcium, it will put out more parathyroid hormone and release calcium from the bones. And so this part is kind of confusing because calcium from the bones, as it's released into the vessels, can have an effect on our blood pressure and vasoconstriction. And I think it kind of relates in the same way that we have blood pressure medicines called calcium channel blockers that work on the vessels. And so I think it works kind of on the similar mechanisms, but it's kind of confusing. But basically what happens is if you're low in vitamin D, you'll be high in this parathyroid hormone, and it's what they call a secondary cause of blood pressure. So you can, if you have low vitamin D and you have high blood pressure, check your parathyroid hormone is really high. It might be related to this process. So get your vitamin D up, take 2,000 to 5,000 international units per day. And it's how, once again, we're the web of life. You can't pull on one thing without affecting something else. So who knew? We're naturally supposed to be probably in the mid, 60s, 70s, 80s on our blood when we get our vitamin D, because that's what the native populations tend to have, that kind of number. Now, if your pigment is kind of low and you can get burned real fast, but you also can get a higher vitamin D response from sun because more sun passes through. If you have more pigment and you block more of the sun from your skin, you may get less vitamin D stimulation in your body. So there could be pigmentary differences with either way. I recommend everybody take the vitamin D, get their vitamin D tested, and take 2,000 to 5,000 international units. I recommend a vegan version because who knew vitamin D comes from sheep's wool lanolin? Sheep's wool grease. Kind of gross, huh? If you don't want to participate in the wool industry, you can buy lichen-based vitamin D, which is on Amazon, lichen-based vitamin D, and you can get 2,000 to 5,000 units. Okay, Roman, I hope that helps. Okay, Tamara says, can you explain how oils affect blood sugar? All right. Well, not so much. I guess I can't explain a direct link between oil and blood sugar, but I can explain why you'll hear like the ideal way to eat is to eat the whole food plant-based diet with no added salt, oil, or sugar. It just kind of rolls off the tongue because it's SOS, salt, oil, and sugar. All these, the salt, oil, and sugar are added, and they're problematic. They're problematic for many, many reasons. And so we do know one of the big problems with oil is one, it's liquid fat. You can add a lot of extra calories. It is inflammatory. We know that it's inflammatory. And we do know that it will constrict your arteries. It will constrict your blood vessels, and it sludges up and increases your viscosity of your blood. So for all these reasons, and probably more reasons that we'll find, it's not good for you. But the salt, oil, and sugar are all food additives. And so sugar per se is not necessarily bad in terms of fruit and the carbs being turned into sugar from, plant foods. Sugar is not really the bad part about it. It's that when you're adding sugar that's not bound to other fibers and gets sent into your body at a drug-like level, an overdose of sugar. And so it becomes a metabolic problem where your body's producing insulin to try to meet the demand of all this sugar in your blood. So I think that's probably when, because it just kind of rolls off the tongue at the same time. Salt, oil, and sugar. That's kind of what I mean there, Tamara. All right. Veronica. All right. She says, I have osteoarthritis and I was vegetarian for 35 years and vegan for more than 5 years. Is it genetic? Okay. Well, There's osteoarthritis, which kind of suggests there's the bones are rough and ragged and degenerate and have degenerated to some extent, and they're not having nice smooth borders. There's osteophytes, areas of the bones that are kind of brittle and jagged. And so this is osteoarthritis. Then there is just low bone density, where they call it osteopenia and osteoarthritis, osteopenia and osteoporosis. Almost like you think of porous bones, osteoporosis. Okay, so this is a common problem with vegans because we tend to be lighter. Osteopenia and osteoporosis, we tend to be lighter. So there's not a lot of weight stress on the bones. And bones react, bones are a use it or lose it phenomenon. If you're not stressing your bones a little bit of weight, then they start to dissolve. The body is very efficient at things. For instance, if you go up to space and you have no weight on your bones start rapidly dissolving. So they have to make those astronauts work out 4 to 5 hours a day just to maintain a modicum of bone density and muscle strength. So the key for bone health is exercise. So calcium is important too, but you should be able to get calcium from your diet. I've talked about that before, about using a food monitoring app called Chronometer if you're worried that you're not getting enough calcium. If you have a low bone density, like osteopenia and osteoporosis, you should try to get about 1,200 milligrams of calcium through your diet. Greens and beans and grains are really high in calcium. Same with nuts and seeds. Okay, so is what we are learning about osteoarthritis, the jagged bones that are painful, is we're learning more about vascular problems and inflammatory problems worsening the bones. And I mean, just like I am starting to think about health in general as kind of like one problem. One problem, if you have sort of a reductionist philosophy, the idea of if one problem relates to all the other problems, maybe that's just the one problem. And that is vascular health. Vascular health. So if your pipes are all clogged, it's going to affect your bones. It's going to affect your heart. It's going to affect, sexual health. It's going to affect your lungs, everything. So osteoarthritis is, there may be some genetic component, but it's the diet and the exercise that plays a bigger role. Okay, Karen says, homeostasis creates a healthy life. Yes, it does, Karen. Yes. Jonathan GI. All right. Vitamin D2 is much cheaper than vitamin D3. Can I just take more D2? So there's some, they're saying that the vitamin D3 is more potent, but honestly, I think you can take vitamin D2 and get away with it. We are always saying vitamin D3 because of its potency, but if there was ever a concern, you could simply test your vitamin D. Okay, Anne Grimmer says, what is your opinion on people who say they had to stop being vegan because they developed health problems and they felt better after eating meat or fish? Okay, so I've heard this, and some of the vegan royalty doctors have kind of answered this, and some like Dr. Clapper talked about, people who are used to so much choline and so much of these maybe amino acids that are high in the animal products, and that you kind of wonder, honestly, if the gut when the gut has to change, maybe it would create a little bit of maybe where you don't feel as good, malaise, feeling bad, where the gut is like, hey, we're used to getting this. What's the problem? Well, so with the microbiome and the bacteria that are in our gut, they change. They're constantly like this and that. But in general, we eat pretty much a similar diet. But when you do a drastic change, it can kind of affect the microbiome And I'm personifying them, right? But if you eat a diet low in meat, the meat bacteria are like slowly dying, and over time they kind of go away, and the plant eating microbiome will predominate. And so, yeah, you kind of wonder about that. Another thing is that a vegan diet's a pain because you're if you live in an omnivore world and you're a vegan, then you're kind of like a square peg in a round hole. And so you're constantly, when you interface with people at restaurants, and you're the thorn in everyone's side about that. And so sometimes just the placebo effect of switching back to a different diet, being like, whew, I don't have to deal with those conflicts. You wonder if that plays a role in the people saying, oh, especially like a lot of times the celebrities will say, oh, I went on the vegan diet and I felt better when I was off it. I honestly, imagine that plays a big role in it. So, there's also, there's a potential that that eating diets rich in these animal proteins and stuff are somewhat, satisfying because of the density that they provide. And people might miss that sort of bust a gut, like sleepiness feeling where they really feel like our little mammal brain, the midbrain, is just happy. It feels, oh, I'm satisfied or something. Maybe it's meeting some sort of soothing thing in their mind, potentially. But I've heard this. I've heard people talk about, oh, I felt bad, and then I went on a diet, and then I felt better. So there's B3. There's B12. People can be not eating B12, but I would say there's about 3 or 4 days when people initially switch to a vegan diet that they can kind of feel out of sorts. And I think it's probably related to the microbiome shifts that we talked about. So I don't know. I hope that helped Anne answer the question. Okay. So Karen says, is maple syrup okay to eat in a reasonable amount? I say yes. Karen. Like I say, the food has to get past your lips, so you have to be able to actually enjoy your food a little bit. If, especially when you're transitioning into a vegan diet, or you're used to eating in a very much more concentrated food way, when you go to an all natural diet, it can seem kind of boring, mainly because the flavors are not as powerful and potent. So a little bit of maple syrup here and there, a little bit of sugar is usually not the problem. These kind of like flavoring is not the problem. The problem is when sugar and this sort of thing, it's maple syrup versus a maple donut, a maple flavored donut. When you're eating kind of sugar as a food, and in a very, very drug-like state, a little bit of flavoring of maple syrup or a little bit of is not the problem. That's what Dr. Lyle, the psychologist, Dr. Lyle calls, I'm gonna mess this up, making big deal out of small problems, I guess you could say, or I messed that up. I messed that up. I got to look it up. But that's one of my favorite sayings of him. All right. Okay, so Roman says, is it important to take vitamin D with vitamin K? Well, you hear a lot about this, but honestly, vitamin K is in, greens and beans and grains. So if you're eating a vegan diet, I don't think you need to add extra K. Now, it is important to take your vitamin D with food because it's fat soluble, and so you're gonna need to have some food to usher in the vitamin D. It's gonna, it's like when you go into the a gated community and the thing goes up and the second car behind it goes with it before the gate closes. This is what vitamin D has to do. It has to go in with some fat. Now, vitamin B12 is the opposite. Vitamin B12, you got to eat it on an empty stomach. You get better absorption that way. So that's definitely want to eat it with a meal. And that meal will, if it contains any kind of vegetables or greens or anything, will have enough vitamin K that it'll just be just fine. Tamara says, thank you so much. Well, thank you, Tamara. I appreciate you being here. Okay. Sometimes I get cold sores, says Veronica. Do I have to take extra vitamins? So the cold sore thing, yeah, these things can pop up and they can be real annoying. One of the things that triggers cold sores, believe it or not, is sunlight, and the sun radiation. So a lot of times people get it at spring break, or they go and they're when all of a sudden you get you're exposed to the sun a lot all of a sudden, and a lot of times you get it when you travel from just not having the same sleep pattern and being a little bit stressed, and so. I don't think it's so much. The Optus ulcers are kind of a somewhat of a mystery. One of the things that will cause Optus ulcers, if you have any jagged aspects or little cuts in your mouth, or you bite your lip or something like that, you can have Optus ulcers on the inside. Cold sores can form blisters and things on the outside, and they're not exactly related, but it can be similar. So. You can always get labs to make sure that you're not missing any kind of nutrient. Or one of the things you can do is when people have like am I missing something? This can be evaluated with the Chronometer app, a free app that you can do food logging for like 1 or 2 days, because it's very time intensive, but do a food log for 1 or 2 days. And then it'll tell you all the different micronutrients that you're getting, and you can determine if you're missing something. So I recommend taking this approach as opposed to the shotgun approach of just taking a bunch of stuff. Because why? Well, a lot of my patients who take more than, say, 3 or 4 supplements will actually develop liver inflammation. And I never find out whether it is related to maybe some sort of contaminant that's in what they're taking, or if they're when you take foods at such a high dose and artificial delivery to the body with such a high dose all at once, you wonder if it drives sort of metabolic processes or drives inflammation unnaturally. And so I generally only want to try to replace something that I'm missing that I know of. Otherwise, you can get yourself into this thing at GNC. You could probably buy 20 different supplements, walk out of there with, $300 worth of supplements, and because you can get yourself worried about everything that you're missing. Plant-based diet is very nutritious, and we should be worried about our omnivore counterparts, because they're displacing all of their high mineral and nutrient foods with these foods that are very dense in protein and fat and cholesterol, but low in vitamins and minerals and stuff like that. So worry about those omnivores. Don't worry about your vegan self. Make sure you take B12 and vitamin D. Okay. Okay, Tamara says, are nut butters okay? All right. I would love to give nut butters 100% green light. I would love that because they're so delicious. God, who doesn't love nut butters? I can eat them all day long. Nut butters are really the gateway food, I think, out of omnivore lifestyle, because they're so kind of densely flavored, and they have that real satisfying effect. The problem with nut butters is they're not a whole food. They're not a whole food. So this is not a complete no. This is more of a yellow light, a McDougall yellow light. And the reason is, chew a nut, maybe do 10 or 20 chews. The particle size is pretty small, but you swallow it down. But when you try to make nut butter yourself, you put it in the food processor and you grind it up. And the particle size gets smaller and smaller and smaller, and zuzzing and zuzzing. And it takes, 20 minutes or something, just getting hit by the blades over and over again. The particle size of the nut butters is so small that you absorb 100% of any kind of the nut butter that you put in. And so you get more of a burst of the fat. And so it's a little bit more, since it's processed and beat up, it's not going to treat you as well if you just have the full whole food. You can eat a lot more calories of the nut butters. When you're trying to lose weight, you got to treat nut butters with respect. Treat those nut butters with respect. They're highly caloric, and they're nutritious. But when you're trying to lose weight, you want to treat them, use very sparingly. Okay. Kristen Backer Ali says, is there a connection between diabetics who are on the keto low carb diet and diabetics having chronic kidney disease? Okay. Well, Kristen, great question. Great question. One of the problems with a low carb diet is that it's high in protein, and a lot of times if they're doing an animal keto diet, it's high in animal protein. And this creates a scenario called hyperfiltration in the kidney, where so much protein is a problem with the kidney, and there is associations between kidney disease and high protein diets. There's also associations between kidney stones and things like gout and stuff like that with the high protein type diet. And and I think I've read, but I need to get more clarity on this, is the idea that saturated fat might even be somewhat inflammatory, causing glomerulosclerosis. But I need to find out more about that. So when people have chronic kidney disease, it is imperative that they go on a low animal protein diet. And one of the things that's very sad out there is one of the recommendations that people with chronic kidney disease will get is related to fruit and potassium. And so this is kind of one of those things, because the potassium will go up when you have the blood levels when you have kidney disease. And so have the doctors take a second look at this, because when studied, a lot of times, and they're getting their potassium and stuff from fruit as opposed to fruit juice and potassium that is separated from the whole food, where you get it like a drug, that it's way healthier and you can still tolerate these types of foods for the most part. And it can help in the rehabilitation somewhat of kidneys. Or at least you make it the least problematic for the kidneys to deal with. Okay, Tamara says, my mom says hi. Hello. Simone, how's it going? Thanks for being here today. All right. Doctor, how telemedicine with you would look, how would telemedicine with you would look like from Illinois? So it kind of looked like this. You would see me on the other side, except I would see you. It's through Zoom. People can go ahead and make an appointment and book an appointment through my Calendly app. You just go to veganprimarycare.com and get set up. You choose online appointment because we wouldn't be in Florida. And folks, I have Cigna and Aetna nationwide. But folks who don't have Cigna and Aetna can use cash pay, where it's $150 for a 1-hour visit, or $75 for a 30-minute visit. And I can provide you primary care. I can provide labs and referrals, and I can be your health advocate. You can send me questions, and I know about your case, and we can get real down into the weeds about your specific health problems. And I can help to try. Ideally, when people go on a very healthy diet, their blood pressure goes down, their cholesterol goes down. And if you're taking pills for that, you can simply stop, depending on how it's working for you. So it's been a great ride as a vegan doctor, because I actually get to see a lot of my patients get better. So I wouldn't have it any other way. All right. All right. I honestly, I'm getting it is coming to the end here. Coming to the end. Jonathan GI says, vitamin K2 versus K1 in terms of function, dietary conversion, supplementation. Have read K2 aids in calcium transport into the bones. I just had a brain freeze or whatever on the difference between K2 and K1. If that's what you've read about calcium transport in the bone, it's probably true. So yeah, Jonathan, I'm going to have to get smarter on these topics before I throw out more advice on these. But in general, vitamin K is prevalent in the plant-based diet, and so I don't recommend people having to buy separate, vitamin D plus K. I'm a minimalist. Try to recommend less is more in general. Of course, I can be wrong, but I'm going to go ahead and call it quits for today, but think about questions and bring it back to me next week. I show up every Wednesday at noon, and if I don't have the preliminary sign up that I'll be doing it that day, then I won't be doing it. But most week Wednesdays at noon, I'm there, ready for your questions. So. What I do have a quote today. I do have a quote to leave you with. All right, where's my quote? Where's the quote? Here it is. Where'd it go? Golly. I was looking for my quote. I wanted to end it off so well. Where did aha? Here it is. Last week, or earlier this week, there was talk about the climate summit. And there was some, on the news, they panned over to Greta Thunberg, and she had a quote. And I thought this was great. She said, "Hope is not passive. Hope is telling the truth. And hope is taking action." Hope is taking action. So, of course, she's talking about climate change. I mean, we've got to take action. How else are we going to have any hope? And so, but I think this relates obviously to your health. If you have health problems, hope is taking action. There is hope, folks. There's hope. Plant-based diet helps most health problems. And there is hope even for things, as dastardly as cancer. And this, you can give your body the best scenario for self-healing by being on a plant-based diet. So hope is taking action, folks. Go vegan, stay vegan, and I'll see you next week, 12 noon, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. See you then.